Hello, loves, and welcome back to my human experience, where the mind meets the body and the body meets the soul. This is season 2, where we will be meeting with influential people that have impactful stories. Julia Poet, also known as Julia Pose, is a 4-time award-winning poet from the Bay Area. She is also a Pilates and exercise enthusiast, an experienced public speaker, a recent honors college graduate, and a survivor who is pursuing sparking inspiration and awareness from her traumas. Writing has been an intricate part of Julia's life from the start. As a form of safe self-expression, writing became a tool of power and defense when enduring the traumas that started as young as 14 years old. From sexual child abuse, addiction, psychosis, eating disorders, parent loss, and grief, at 28 years old, Julia has overcome many obstacles and challenges that leave many wondering how she manages to keep her smile beaming while carrying an optimistic outlook on life. She advocates for never giving up, giving and receiving second and third chances, and remembering that finding the light is as easy as opening up our eyes. For in the darkest of times, that is when the light shines the brightest.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very happy to be here. Very so honored that we've got to do this.
So I'll just start by asking, we'll start at the beginning. Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I am from the East Bay area, born and raised. Well, I was born in San Bernardino County because I'm adopted. And my parents went and got me when I was 12 hours old, brought me back to lovely Concord. So I've been lucky enough to have my childhood home my entire life. And then I actually got my own house pretty close to my dad. So we're pretty close.
That's awesome. I love that. And you're still in the Bay Area, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. When did you start writing?
I've always been a writer. I would say since I could hold a pen. Like some kids would color like on the walls. I would like try and scribble little sentences. And I would say one of the first pinnacle memories that really shaped me to become a writer was I was in 3rd or 4th grade, and around this time I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I didn't understand how to regulate everything that was going on, but I did know that the piece between pen and paper and no judgment brought me comfort because I was able to write, whatever I wanted and how I felt. And then progressively throughout high school, that continued, and I definitely excelled more in all English classes. And then, so it kind of just grew until my early 20s. That's when I really started to develop it as a career and a voice.
I love that. And you have several publications out, correct?
I do. I have 4 now. I'm featured in 4 poetic anthologies, all published by Eber and Ween. They are a veteran nonprofit owned publishing company. And I've loved working with them. It's a great starting place for writers to go and share poetry. Currently finishing my debut book. But I always keep pushing back that date. So
yeah, that's fair. Writing a book is a whole thing. What inspired you to write your own?
I have proudly endured and survived many traumas throughout my adolescent and early 20s. So the name of my book is Progression, and it's a collection of poetry about addiction, grief, overcoming, and depression, anxiety, kind of just the overall experiences I went through, and then the progression of how I came to really overcome a lot of it. And the purpose of it is I'm hoping that my readers will feel seen, validated, and heard. And I want to just comfort somebody when I was looking for that.
Mm-hmm. Poetry is my favorite. I feel like a lot of times poetry says things in a way that make you feel understood that, normal words just couldn't.
Exactly. And one thing I really love about poetry too is I love how you could put an entire, what would maybe take 3 or 4 pages of a nonfiction into like a 2-stanza poetry line. And it's really amazing how poetry is, I personally think, a bigger reflection of like interpret, how do I want to say this? I think poetry imitates art, because I think Lana Del Rey may have sang that at one time. But yeah.
Poetry is absolutely a form of art. It's my form of art. Writing is my form of art, right? It's a creative expression. And, for me, I can't draw at all. So that's my outlet.
I
I
know.
think words can just be just as beautiful as a picture.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I love it. And so, yeah, poetry, it came to me, and I'm really happy I found it. It's definitely my purpose in life.
I love that. You mentioned some of your tribulations. How do you feel like you got from that dark place to getting on the other side of it?
A really good question. The first thing that comes to mind is I have a resilience in me that just has never been able to really stay down. I mean, I've had my down periods, do not get me wrong. However, in the depths and the trenches of some of my darkest times, where I'm literally questioning, am I going to finish my college degree? Am I going to make it? Am I? And then just this small voice in the back of my head has always said, you are Julia Pose. You are going to achieve everything and be okay. And I will cling on to that, as well as I have a mantra that I will say to myself every morning. It's like a manifestation mantra, and I will keep it to myself just to cherish it. But that's one thing also too, is the self reminders that my dreams have been what has saved me. Just keep hanging on.
I love that. I love the mantra too. I do stuff like that. My little affirmations, they really do help, especially when the voices in your the voices in your head are quite loud.
Yeah,
I could say with the
seriously.
ADHD, they can be crazy and run a mile a minute.
Yeah, and I mean, I definitely, oh man, the ADHD too is a lot of fun as a writer. And also just to manage, because I personally, I personally was being treated for it, like medicated when I was younger, but now as an adult, treating it by myself, it's definitely interesting how that goes on, because it can really challenge your self-confidence, which I've been doing more research on recently, just with all of the progressive research in neurodivergence.
Mm-hmm. What have you found in your research? I'm curious.
I have found that having ADHD doesn't make you a burden. It doesn't make you lesser intellectually speaking. And it's a gift, like it more like anything else is. And I say, it's not a burden. It's not, because myself growing up, I was always the loudest in the room, usually still am. And I just was just this energetic child that felt very dimmed because I had to be. And nobody was kind of explaining to me like, well, this is why this is happening. So I basically have gone, the research I've done were all the questions I could remember like struggling with as a kid. So, the impulses and the, just quick spontaneity and, the, what do they call it? The ADHD burnout, all of that stuff. It just felt so validating to know, like, I'm not lazy. I'm not stupid. Like, because I really struggled with that, sincerely, because when I was diagnosed with ADHD, so I'm 28 years old and I was diagnosed in 2004. And in that year, I was also held back in 3rd grade, which, looking back academically, that was a great thing, but I took it so personally. So what I love about the development in ADHD research today is that it's not being presented to children and parents and even adults who are getting diagnosed as a bad thing. It's just, it's a part of who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. How do you make your creative process work for you with it?
That's hard. It's a challenge, I have to say. Routine is one of my favorite things. So typically I'm an early riser. So I love writing. Sorry, my cat's one sec.
You're okay.
She always has to be near me. So I love writing first thing when I get up. I have a document every year. I start a document. I just call it Life Poetry 2025 is what we're on now. So I start with writing a poem or two in the morning, and then I will do that for about 30 minutes, kind of as a warm up exercise. And then continuing on, I go in. Right now, my main project is progression. So I give myself 30 minutes of that. And I set timers. That's one hack I've really learned, like that's helped me, because if not, I'm going to look at this thing on my computer and just, dart and get so distracted. So, and that was one thing that I had read as a tool to help, like adults organize their work environments, is to set timers. So that really helped me.
Yeah, I like that. That's a really good hack, especially for staying focused. It's very
Absolutely.
easy to get distracted when you're writing or really doing anything that you're having to sit down and just focus on.
Oh yeah, because I don't know about you, but I definitely get those like I can't sit still. I just can't. And
Mm-hmm.
try like honestly, when I like the times I'll go get my nails done, that's like my practicing of like just sit still and just relax. But no, it's a challenge, but it's one that I'm very happy to take on, learning more about myself. And I choose to kind of naturally, holistically treat it, if that's the word I want, like we're going to use. But overall, it's gotten a lot better with age. So that's great.
That is great. I know you also do some speaking. Can you tell me
Do.
about that?
So I am an award-winning public speaker. My main topic I speak on is sexual abuse awareness for minors. I am a survivor. I endured abuse from the ages 14 to 16. And then in the middle of that, had another unfortunate encounter. And so my purpose is to share my story, but I also inform the telltale signs of what not to be lured into. Because parents are taught, don't tell your kids, don't go off with strangers. Don't talk to this person on the internet you don't know. But it's so much different than that. Like when I really evaluate how I, was put into that situation, when I always think about how nobody ever told me what, a manipulation tactic can look like, or how people can use your weaknesses against you and for their own selfish needs. So I really go and warn and, just educate young people. And I think the youngest I've ever done is a class of high school seniors, just to really be aware and, just kind of, I always imagine I'm talking to my 14-year-old self. So that's really what helped me. And I've had parents and teachers and students reach out to me and thank me and say, if it wasn't for you, I, would have made this choice. And I'm so happy I didn't. So really to spread awareness and to share my story, and to help.
Mm-hmm. I think that's amazing. And I can imagine it's probably not easy to get up and talk about. Do you talk to a lot of like high schools and schools and stuff?
It's been a while, I will say. The pandemic kind of jolted the development of where I really wanted to go with my public speaking. So I haven't really been in that part of my life as much. More so the writing I do reflecting some of the I chose to put public speaking just to rest and then finish progression so I could kind of combine the two, because in progression there are poems about my experience. And then, I'm doing a lot of collaborations with different bookstores this summer. So in that I will go kind of entwine the two. But I miss it. I really miss it a lot. So hopefully I'll get to have more opportunity when school starts again.
Yeah. When things open back up, for sure. I know the pandemic kind of threw so many of us through a
Literally,
path that we weren't expecting.
I know that, and it's crazy to think how long ago that was. All right, you can sit here. This is my emotional support. Yeah, her name's Kiri, but she is usually sitting right here whenever I work. So
I love
yeah,
it. She could be a part of this.
awesome. See what you do. Anyways, yeah, I do. Oh God, I miss public speaking. So I'll get back into that for sure. That's not done in my books.
Yeah. When you talk about the kind of signs that people can look out for, what are they?
Um, Personal target of interest. So my perpetrator, knew at the time I'm a model, and I was still very, very active in that career in that part of my life. And he was a person of power who, could basically, make my dreams come true. So, for example, one of the first encounters that actually was the first encounter that led to the first abuse, it started with a photo shoot. And so, and I was 14, I getting this offer to, from somebody who was a teacher. He was an acting coach of mine, and not in school, just an outward class. And so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I have this opportunity by a teacher who is giving me this attention and telling me the things that he knew I wanted to do in my modeling career. And so because you're at 14, you don't know whether or not to question that. However, it was when I remember feeling like my intuition for the first time when he said, okay, well, I think it would be best if it's just you and I collaborating together, because I wanted to bring a friend, or my dad usually would always be a prospector on these shoots. So that was one of them. And then the second one was, I would say keep so my perpetrator was like outside of my like high school and my home,
Mm-hmm.
but he found his way into both. He was close with my family. We had him over for holidays. And he somehow made his way into being like a featured acting coach in the theater club at my high school. So that was all done just with the fact that he was slowly seeping himself into my life to essentially take control. So keep your private life private, and always, always, always have somebody with you. If you are a minor of any kind, or it doesn't matter, if you feel any sort of intuitional, like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this because being alone with this person is not the right thing to do, then follow it. I mean, and it's hard to explain that to kids. And I mean, really anybody who is in a place kind of where I was, I had no self-esteem, at the time. And that was another thing he really sunk his teeth into. So yeah, it's hard to really, yeah, I would just say, sorry, I'm rambling a little bit.
No, that's all super helpful. And I like that you brought it up, how it was involved with like the modeling and stuff, because I've seen that myself, being in the industry. There are a lot of predators, and there are a lot of men that prey on the younger girls with these promises of, boosting their career and helping their portfolio and all those things. And I feel like they have a sixth sense almost for the ones that are more vulnerable.
Oh, absolutely, they do. And that's the most. It's fascinating how I am interested in how that ticks so much, because I had a therapist once tell me, like, a great way to overcome is to understand. So a lot of times these perpetrators have had their own trauma, or literally are like mentally like psychopathic or sociopathic, because that's to know who is vulnerable and have that sixth sense, as you just said, that's not a normal thing. That's not something that your average empathetic human has. And, you know, I'm just so grateful that I am grateful that I actually endured that, because I've met some girls who have been through the same thing who have not had a positive trajectory in their lives, like just hard to really get up from that. And it's excruciating. I understand. And you know, you as well. But it's one of those things where I'm grateful that I really did come out of it like this on the end. I mean, I went through it afterwards. I can tell you about. So I was the one who came forward and got myself out of it. So I was 16 and I had just started dating my first real boyfriend. And I wanted to know if intimacy could be painless. So upon doing that, my boyfriend at the time, because my perpetrator was involved, he like in my life still, including taking our senior ball photos with this boyfriend. So the boyfriend at the time was the one who was like, hey, I'm going to put these puzzle pieces together. Is this true? Nobody knew. Everybody had ideas, but it was happening in front of the entire world. And this guy was 18 years old. So for an 18-year-old and I applaud him to this day for how gentle he was handling that. And in a way, I was so grateful that he did, because I knew I wanted to get out, but I didn't know how. So essentially, you know, it was, okay, this is happening, Julia. How are we going to move forward? So I said, I think I just need to tell my dad. And that's what I did. I will never forget walking into his office at his house. And I said, Dad, X, Y, and Z has been doing this to me and with me for 2 years. And immediately I had detectives, police, firefighters, like everybody within my house was in my house within 15 minutes. So from there, my case did not carry out. We opened a case, obviously, but did not get carried out, as most of them don't. And the next 10 years of my life were turbulent and very beautiful. Turbulent because I faltered to a lot of the side effects of sexual abuse. I struggled with addiction. I was in a stimulant-induced psychosis that got triggered by the repressed trauma and the drug abuse I was doing at the time combined. And I was in a hospital twice in one summer. And so that was 2019 to 2020 time we're talking. And then the pandemic happened. And after I had gotten out of the hospital the second time, the pandemic was there. So I kind of got lucky because I needed the downtime to recover. And then all of a sudden, like 21 through 21 to now, I got my life back better than even before the abuse. It was something I still am in awe of myself, because I got into my college program, my choosing. I was working again. I had stable relationships. I bought my first car. Like, all of these things in my life started to come up. And then the writing poured in. And I just sit back and think, oh my gosh, is that really my life? Like, all of that is so much. I mean, that's kind of a summary too. But overall, a lot of my strength comes from the fact that I am here and stronger than ever. And I can tell you that will make some full-grown perpetrators cry. So, and that's another really big reason why I write and am such a vocal activist about everything in my life, like including, the nitty-gritty, like the drug abuse that came. That really was hard, because I was using for various reasons, including mainly the abuse. But I will always be honest and open because I know what it's like to not have a voice, then to silence and numb your own voice. And I don't think that I was not meant to do that. So that's
Yeah.
my story.
Well, I have a few things to say. One, you're incredibly brave for coming forward. I know that is very scary. And then to have law enforcement involved like that, I know that process in itself can be a little bit re traumatizing, especially if, you didn't get the outcome that you were hoping for, which is hard. And then
Yeah.
the other piece of that is how much heart and strength it takes to go through things like that and come out on the other side. And I like that you are open about the addiction because I think a lot of people don't actually understand that addiction is really a side effect of trauma.
It is. Yeah.
So I know that a lot of people who struggle with that, there's underlying things that are happening there too.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
amazing that you came
Yeah.
out on the other side.
Yeah. No, I really am just truly grateful for, I think it's not a bad thing to say I'm grateful to be me because that took me years to say. And I mean, I still have my bad days. I'm not perfect by any means, but I love that you said that their addiction is a side effect of trauma because addiction has so many negative connotations and associations and judgments with it that really just frustrate me. Like they do because it's so easy to look at somebody and think, oh, I'm better than you because, I'm not doing this thing to hurt myself or what have you. Right. And really, I think that one message in my writing I really want to put out is for my readers to become more empathetic and instead of judging the book by its cover, to, stay in a room and think, okay, I just walked in from, this grand achievement. Maybe the person to my left just lost somebody in their life. Maybe this person to my right is having a really great or bad day. You know what I mean? Just more because people don't understand the severity of my trauma. And I mean, that's going to come out in the books. And that's also why I was so happy to be featured here with you to really like have the safe platform to like speak on it because I know some people in my life know, but most others, especially in responses to my writing, I get that, oh, well, I can tell like something happened, but what isn't and all that stuff. So yeah, and I mean, I still, my mom died last year and I definitely went through a hell of a relapse, in my vices. And I am happy to say that I'm doing much better, much clean and sober. And, that was one thing too, that a lot of people kind of passed a lot of judgment on me for were the two pinnacles of, well, is she just using these, events in her life as a means to use? And that's kind of where I'm like, okay, we need to take a step back because no one's going to understand unless they've been through it. And I wouldn't wish addiction on, my ex-best friend or worst enemy, right? Like I just wouldn't. It's horrible. It just is.
It is. Yeah. And there's a couple of things that I've come to understand both about ADHD and trauma is, I mean, obviously ADHD is a neurodivergence. Your brain works differently. When you add trauma to that, it also changes the way that your brain works and it can create an inability to self-soothe. So it's not even that, you're not trying, it's that your brain makes it incredibly difficult for you to be able to do that. So a lot of times we turn to other things to help us regulate our emotions, especially in
Yeah.
like heavy grief. Grief is dark and it is incredibly heavy. And it's one of those things that you cannot understand until you've gone through it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, I would love to touch on grief for a second because I've been really, that's something I So I have two moms in heaven, my biological mom and so I have the one who created me and the one who raised me, right? But, my biological mom, she passed when I was really young, and I'm blessed to say that we had an open adoption. I was too young to understand, and because of we weren't close, so it didn't affect me as somebody who, my mother, my mom's passing was really slow, long, and hard. I say that because I was a caregiver for 10, 12 years. My mother was immobile. She was incontinent, so, adult diapers and all that comes with it. And mind you, this is going on top of the height of my addiction, on top of me recently getting out of the abuse. And then I wish somebody would have told me what anticipatory grief was while that was happening, because I didn't learn that until after she passed. So so it was last January, and there's one thing I could say to anybody is, you're going to know before it happens. I felt it. I felt it in my bones. I felt it just so internally, that because my mom was ill. She was kind of in and out of the hospitals a lot. And my dad wasn't really saying much about it this time, which, one, was the red flag. I was like, okay. And then two was the duration of her stay, just, in various treatment centers and whatnot. And then when it happened, I was working in a restaurant at a time. And I just remember feeling all of a sudden that I'd lost something, like that's the way I could describe it. And then I pulled out my phone. I had those texts from family, like, Julia, I'm so sorry texts. And I was like, okay. And then, I turned around and my dad and brother were, so the first year of grief was absolutely terrible. I felt like I was not really here at all. And it was very interesting how my life pivoted in so many ways. I lost my mom, who I believe kind of sent me signs to really grow, and I didn't want to. So I also, people also treated me a lot differently after she passed. And I think one of the hardest things about losing anybody, especially a parent, anytime, is horrible. But to be the only 20-something-year-old in my peer group to have lost a parent, there was only a limited amount of time that an old group that I used to hang out with could provide, the support, until it became, okay, we know she's dead. Can we, move on now? And that actually is what led me to really just kind of, I've full throttled into, numbing and, just trying to go out and distract myself. So yeah, grief is no joke. Year 2 has been better. But it has its ups and downs, I would say.
Yeah, no, grief never goes away.
No.
I know. I always kind of describe it like an ocean, where it's like sometimes you're drowning in it. Sometimes the waves just hit you out of nowhere.
Yep.
But also another thing that I wanted to mention, because you touched on people not wanting to listen to you anymore, is that one of the things I've understood the most about grief, and it took me a long time to understand this, is that it needs to be witnessed. And that's why we share, about our loved ones, and why we do these, memorials and celebrations of life. They're actually really important, and they're really a part of the process.
Yeah, they are. Absolutely. And that's such a great way to say that. I mean, I was angry. Like, I don't know about for your experience, but I was angry. That was my first, emotion of it. And so one thing that I really had to let go of was that it is no one's going to say the right thing. And I think I love what you said about the witnessing thing, because for some reason I just felt so unseen, unheard, misunderstood. So, and I mean, a few peers of mine, that past and present, they knew, they kind of watched, my life and what it was like to, be a caregiver. And, it's really hard, especially in my mom's case. She really battled with a few illnesses that just kind of took over. So to have that happen, was an interesting experience to grieve, because I'm like, okay, which version of her am I grieving today, I guess. But it's definitely fueling my writing more than anything right now. I will say that I've actually, I've been scoping through my socials in different groups that I'm wanting to connect with to really just talk about it more. And one thing too, like that I kind of took as a silver lining is that I really hope that one day when my, friends lose their parents, that I'm one of the first people they call, because they're going to like, oh, Julia has been through that. Like, I want that to happen, because I kind of, self-deprecating humor. I'm like, well, one of us had to go through it first to know how it works. But overall, now she's, I see my mom every day. She's in purple flowers and mourning doves. I see her every day.
I love that you look for the signs. I think that's so special. For me, it's butterflies. So,
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's
yeah.
my grandpa too. His sign was a butterfly. I love. Yeah. And I think it's really healthy, can I say, to choose a faith, choose a higher something. It like doesn't necessarily have to be religious, but I choose to believe that she's here. She's everywhere. I graduated college a couple weeks ago, and
Congratulations.
you. And it's so crazy. So my mom's passing day is January 16th. My ceremony was May 16th. And on top of that, I remember it was a very complex emotional day, for obvious reasons. And I just remember really tearing up before walking on the stage. And I looked down and this girl on her cap literally said, "Hi from heaven. Good job." And I was like, okay. I was like, all right, that's all I needed to see. So I think that if I could give any main advice, it's whenever you're ready, find something that brings you a light and a comfort and hang on to it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that has definitely gotten me through some of the darkest moments, is just having that faith. Like you said, it doesn't have to be anything in particular, but just something to hold on to hope, because you have to hold
Absolutely.
on to hope to get onto the other side.
Absolutely.
And I love that you look for the signs, because things like that, I'm just saying, it can't be coincidence. The universe is too smart,
Literally. I think, oh man, something I heard recently was there are no coincidences in the world. I do believe everything happens for a reason. I also believe that what you put out into the world is what you get back. Now, I've had my trials and tribulations with that, but I think that's one of kind of going back to a subject we touched on earlier. I think that's also one of the reasons why I throughout all of the bad that was inflicted, and uncontrollably onto me, that even from the grief, the abuse, the addiction, you name it, if I were to have let that sour my development, I can't imagine, walking around in this world, very defensive and scared. And, I think that's one thing that, it's just important, to always kind of take a step back and to think, I might really be feeling this way, and I want the world to know that I'm mad or I'm angsty. And really, it's okay to feel those emotions, but to there, you just, in my opinion, be really careful about where you go and where you go, place those emotions and who you place them with. Definitely, and I mean, one thing I say that because I've confided in the wrong people, about my grief. And I remember reading a list on an account called Girl Meets Grief of the things, what not to say. And it's amazing how, the, phrases of, oh, that again, or so and so, but just always be careful.
Yeah, you need to find safe people, people who are grounded, people who are compassionate. I think, people who can meet you where you are, because if
Yep.
somebody hasn't experienced the depth that you have, they're just not going to understand. And I can say also, I love how you say that you're grateful for it, because it took me a really long time to say that. And then it also took me a long time to feel okay saying that, because
Yeah.
people are very judgmental about that. But I truly think that experiencing trauma, if you let it, just expands your empathy and your compassion for other people. And I don't have room in my heart to hold hate, because all it does is hurt me.
No, absolutely. I think that's wonderful. Um, frozen a little bit. Okay, there we go. I no, I agree. I mean, I really after. I mean, and it took me a while as well. Like that's not something that I developed overnight. Although I wish, because the time in my life, at 16 to 23 or 22, I would say, that was probably that time. Like I was that person. I really was. I blamed everything and everyone, like did not want to take any accountability. Oh, well, this happened to me, so I'm going to say F it and go, make terrible decisions on a 2 p.m. And among that, I was not good to the people around me. And nobody could tell me that I was actually just being horrible, mostly because the people that, were affected by that, they're not in my life anymore. And I totally understand. But one thing too was that, I went through kind of an interesting thing mentally, through the abuse and then, the hospital stays I had. When I was going through the abuse, my inner voice, conscious ego, I've had a couple different therapists call it different things. It got muted. It got turned off, if that makes sense. And so I didn't have that intuition for literally until a couple months after I got out of the hospital. I remember hearing myself in the back of my head again for the first time. And I was like, where did that come from? And I know that sounds so crazy, but it's actually pretty common because, again, the ADHD, the trauma changing every neurological pathway in your brain, and then some with, just other components of things that I've been through. I am, what my doctors have said, one of the really, really lucky ones to have gotten that back. And in a weird way, I have said before that I am just the most self-aware and not conscious, but self-aware and just compassionately living, I would say. Mm-hmm. And, I love people. I really do. I think they're great.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would imagine it was some kind of defense mechanism, like a dissociation. You go into survival mode and your brain and your body does all kinds of things. And you were so young.
Yeah.
That's something I have to remind myself of. I'm like, my brain wasn't even fully developed. So on top of trauma just changing the way your brain is anyway, I mean, your brain is still developing. It wreaks all kinds of havoc in just the way that your mind works, and you kind of get stuck in that nervous system fight or flight. And I mean, I have been years of therapy so far removed from it, but I can tell you my nervous system response still sometimes to the smallest thing, it just gets set off and I I can feel it in my body. And
Yeah.
like how you said, you're self-aware now. Like I'm aware what's going on. So it isn't so bad because at
No,
least I know
literally.
now.
Yeah. And I mean, that's exactly what it was. My brain, so we compartmentalize, like psychologically, our brains cannot physically take on trauma all at once. So we compartmentalize it and shove it and, into different parts of us. And not just in your brain. I believe personally it's throughout the body. Like, you store trauma in your hips. For me, I hold my grief here. I'm working with a chakra healer right now, for in grief specifically. And just when I work with him, he, has said, he's like, I see other traumas like in you. And more or less I'm just on a journey right now to really better understand myself, and in all ways, because I didn't realize how far removed I was and my body and my mind did that to save us. Like, and one thing too, when I do write, I am going to write a book one day, a memoir about my abuse. I'm really hoping that other writers or other people, like, I'm wondering if anyone went through that same thing where, it's like internally, like I was turned off. Like to summarize it, I would never think before I would say anything because I couldn't, because I was always in that, but, overall, I think that it's kind of amazing how survivors don't get the choice as to, what happens to them, but we have the choice to make something out of it, or on ourselves, to rebirth ourselves in a way, I think, because there is so much potential in healing. And I really hope that any person who can empathize with what we're talking about, knows that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you're seeing somebody for like a chakra healer. I see this gal for Reiki, and she explained
Ooh.
something to me this last time I saw her that I'd never heard before, but it made so much sense to me. Is how our cells kind of co-regulate with people in our lives that we're close to. And when we lose somebody in our life, those cells actually have to die. And that's part of why we feel like we're dying, because a part of us actually is. And I was like, wow.
Wow. I'm going to look into that too, because I've heard really great things about Reiki.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I was like, gosh, that makes so much sense, because I don't know how else to describe it to people when you're in that really deep grief. It does. It feels like you're dying.
No, literally. I have not, I remember, feeling like a physical pain inside of me. Like it was like my abdomen womb area, and, which makes sense for the maternal loss. But I just was like, what is going on with me? And I don't think I've, the cry I had, and sometimes do have, but it was a sound I never heard myself make before. And, as much as, I miss her and, I want her here, ultimately what I am really working on is just, saying that she's no longer in pain, and that's the best thing. And I mean, she was just an amazing mom. She was the best. I was born out of love. So that's what she used to say per my adoption. So, no, I think that grief is something. Oh, I'll touch on this last thing. Grief changes you forever, like forever. And I recently accepted that as well. And I think that's something that was hard for me to accept, because I mean, in my first year of it, I lost my mom. I lost all the friends I had. And honestly, that was a good thing. Like, yeah. And my entire life changed. Like everything. I was like, what else is going to change, more or less? But I was a top poet of my company. I am in the best relationship of my life, and like the good things that came. And then when I finally started to allow myself to function, a little bit normally, I guess, again, I noticed just how much strength I had earned through it. I'm the only female in my household now. So I'm doing the things that I used to see my mom do to help my dad and my brother. And I love doing that because in my heart, it feels like I'm making something that's her recipe. And like, that's her there, right? So it's a strength I don't know too well yet, but I'm very, very much ready to work on.
I love that you're leaning into it. My
Yeah.
advice there would just be to keep leaning into it. And, you'll find your meaning and it'll help keep pushing you forward through all the other things that you're doing.
Yeah. Awesome. I love talking to you. This was fantastic.
Yeah. And so, two last questions. One, I know that you did like a poetry event recently. What are those? Where can people find them?
Yes, great question. So I am working with Bookshop West Portal in San Francisco, and we are resurrecting the poetry community. So the event that I just had was bring your favorite poem, but it had to be not authored. So I couldn't read any of my work, right? I read Sylvia Plath. I read Robert Frost. And it was great. It was a cold, windy day in San Francisco that day. So we're going to try again. The next one will be in the same place, same time. I need to confirm with that. But overall, I am launching I'm going to be with them at least once a month during the summer. Hopefully get the opportunity to continue with them through the fall. And the events I'll be hosting are sharing poetry of, original authors to favorite authors. I dream of doing writing workshops, just really building a community of people, poets, writers who just have the same passion for it that I do. Because half of my writing, and in poetry, especially in descriptive form, it comes from the people I meet and the experiences I have. And also too, the one thing I noticed is the pandemic really shot a lot of like this kind of stuff. So yeah, Bookshop West Portal. And we haven't planned our second event yet, but it's in the works.
I love it. That's very exciting and super awesome.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I want to ask you is where can people find you in your work?
So you can find me at juliapoet.com, or you can find me at poetrynation.com/juliapoet. And soon you will be able to find me on Amazon once I finish editing progression like I'm doing today. So
Awesome.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Truly, it was an honor to hold space for you, to hear your story and to speak with you. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. I absolutely loved it, and I hope we could collaborate in the future again.
Absolutely.
If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to my podcast. Remember, loves, your best is always enough. Thank you for sharing this space with me today. Until next time.